The terrorist commander pressed the detonator against the throat of the kneeling engineer and smiled into the hidden camera. "Tell your ghosted," he said, "that when the water runs black, she will know it was me." Then he pulled the trigger on the man's radio, and 200,000 lives began their countdown. 6,000 miles away in a briefing room at Camp Pendleton, Senior Chief Ethan Walker held his little sister's call sign patch over his head and laughed. "Ghost actual, my baby sister." The room roared. Claire Walker did not laugh. She was the only person alive who could stop what was already in motion. Before we go any further, if you believe the quietest person in the room is sometimes the most dangerous one, take 1 second to subscribe to this channel and follow this story all the way to the end, because it turns in ways you will not see coming. And drop the name of the city where you're watching from in the comments right now so I can see just how far this story has traveled. Now let's begin. The laughter in that briefing room at Camp Pendleton lasted 11 seconds. Ethan Walker counted them later in the dark, long after everything had gone wrong. 11 seconds that he would replay 100 times, wishing he could reach back through time and clamp his own mouth shut. But in the moment, he had no idea. In the moment, he was simply doing what he always did, which was command the room, own the air, and be the loudest and the surest man in any building he walked into. 17 years in the teams did that to a man. It carved him down to something hard and certain. Ethan had kicked in doors on 3 continents. He had carried wounded brothers across open ground while rounds cracked past his ears. He had buried friends and stood at attention while folded flags were pressed into the hands of widows. He had earned the right he believed to trust exactly one thing above all others, what a man could do with his own 2 hands under fire when it counted. Everything else, all the maps and the models and the intelligence briefings that was support, that was the stuff that happened behind the screen while men like him did the actual work. So when Commander Ryan Mitchell walked to the front of the room that morning and said, "Gentlemen, this is Dr. Claire Walker, Tactical Intelligence, and she'll be running point on the analytical side of this operation." Ethan didn't hear the words the way he should have. He heard something else entirely. He heard the name Walker. He turned in his seat, and there she was, his sister. "Claire," the name came out of him before he could stop it. Half a laugh already riding on it. "You've got to be kidding me, she. Claire, what are you doing here?" "I work here, Ethan." Her voice was quiet, level. The same voice she'd used when they were kids, and he'd tease her about her books, her lists, her endless questions. "I've worked here for 4 years. 4 years?" He shook his head, grinning at the men around him, inviting them in the way he always did. 4 years and nobody told me. You know, this is my team right at Iron Viper. This is the big leagues, kiddo. This isn't a library. A few of the younger operators chuckled, uncertain, watching their senior chief to see how far this was going to go. That was when Ethan saw the patch. Clipped to the strap of her gear bag, small olive drab stitched in black thread. 2 words, Ghost Actual. And something in him just couldn't let it pass. It was too perfect. It was too rich. His little sister, the girl who used to cry when the neighbor's dog barked too loud, the girl he'd taught to ride a bike and carried home when she skinned her knee, walking into his briefing room with the call sign of a ghost, a phantom, an operator's operator. He reached over and unclipped it. He held it up. "Ghost Actual." He read it out loud, slow savoring it. "Claire, sweetheart, do you even know what a call sign like this means to guys like us?" "Yes," she said, "I do." But he wasn't listening anymore. He was already turned to the room, already lifting the patch, already saying the words that would haunt him. And the laughter came and it rolled, and Claire Walker stood in the middle of it with her chin level and her eyes dry, and she said nothing at all. Commander Mitchell let it go on for exactly as long as he was willing to. Then he said in a voice that didn't need to be loud to cut through the noise, "That's enough." The room went quiet. Mitchell looked at Ethan. He looked at him for a long moment, and there was something in the older man's face that Ethan didn't understand yet, something that might have been disappointment and might have been warning. "Senior Chief," Mitchell said, "you'll want to hold on to that opinion." "Sir." "I said you'll want to hold on to it." Mitchell held out his hand. Ethan gave him the patch. Mitchell walked it back to Claire and set it down in front of her gently, the way you'd return something valuable. "Because by the time this operation is over, you're going to want to have as few words to eat as possible." Ethan laughed again, but it was a smaller laugh now. "Come on, Ryan, it's my sister." That's Dr. Walker to this team, Mitchell said. And she's the reason some of you are going to come home. Now sit down and pay attention because she's about to tell you things about the target that my best analysts couldn't tell me last week. Claire stood. She didn't rush. She didn't fumble with her equipment. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small drive, and connected it to the room's system without a word of small talk or apology. And when the first display came up, when the men in that room got their first look at what she'd been building for the last 72 hours, the laughter died completely. Because it was beautiful work. Even Ethan, who understood maybe a third of it, could feel that it was beautiful. Movement patterns, communication intercepts, financial threads, a spider's web of connections all pulling toward a single point in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, a compound where intelligence said a man named Omar Rahman was hiding. This is the target, Claire said. This is where they say Omar Rahman is. Iron Viper's job is to go in and get him. Damn right it is, one of the operators muttered. Claire turned and looked at him. That's what worries me, she said. The room shifted. Ethan felt it, a ripple of confusion. Say again, Mitchell said, and there was something careful in the way he said it, like he'd already learned to listen when this woman changed her tone. I've been over this package 11 times, Claire said, and every single time something about it feels wrong to me. I can't put it in a report yet. My superiors want proof, not instinct. But I'm telling you right now in this room before you plan a single thing that I don't trust it. Ethan couldn't stay quiet. He never could. Claire, this is real intelligence. This is vetted. This came up the chain. You can't just have a feeling and blow up an operation. I'm not blowing anything up, she said, turning to face her brother fully for the first time. I'm asking you to slow down long enough to look at what I'm looking at. And what are you looking at? A man who's evaded the United States military for 9 years, Claire said, moving like an amateur. She pointed at the screen. Look at these patterns. Look at how clean they are. Look how easy it is to draw a line from A to B to C. Omar Rahman has survived 9 years because he's a ghost. He doesn't leave lines like this. Nobody who's actually careful leaves lines like this. And suddenly, 3 days ago, he starts leaving a trail a first-year cadet could follow. She let that sit. Ethan, I've spent my whole career learning to read the difference between a mistake and a message. This isn't a mistake. This is somebody wanting to be found. The room was silent. Ethan wanted to argue. Every instinct he had wanted to argue. But he'd known his sister for 34 years, and there was something in the flatness of her voice, the total absence of drama in it, that scraped against his certainty like a nail on glass. Analysts always see ghosts, he said, but it came out weaker than he wanted. No offense, it's the job. You stare at data long enough, everything starts to look like a trap. And operators always want to move, Claire said. No offense, it's the job. You've got the door in front of you, and every second you don't kick, it feels like a second you're losing. She held his eyes. That's why they put us in the same room, Ethan. So one of us slows the other one down before somebody gets killed. Commander Mitchell stepped forward. That's enough for now. Dr. Walker, I want you to keep digging. I want that proof. Senior Chief, your team preps as if we're going. Everybody works the problem from both ends. We meet again in 12 hours. He looked around the room. Nobody dies today because we were too proud to double-check. Dismissed. The men filed out quieter than they'd come in. A few of them glanced at Claire on the way past, and the glances were different now. Curious, a little wary. Ethan lingered. He waited until the room had cleared, until it was just the two of them and the hum of the equipment, and then he walked over to where his sister was carefully packing her gear. Hey, he said, hey, that was... He rubbed the back of his neck. Look, about the patch, it was a joke. I know it was a joke, so we're good. She stopped packing. She looked at him, and for just a moment the flat professional calm slipped, and he saw something underneath it that made his stomach drop. Because it was the same look she'd worn at 17 when their father missed her graduation. The same look she'd worn at their mother's funeral when Ethan was overseas and couldn't get home in time. We're good, Claire said, but it wasn't true, and they both knew it wasn't true. She clipped the patch back onto her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked out. And Ethan Walker stood alone in an empty briefing room, feeling for the first time in a very long time like he'd gotten something badly, badly wrong. He didn't know the half of it yet. The thing about Ethan Walker was that he genuinely loved his sister. That was what made it complicated. This wasn't a story about a cruel man. If it had been, it would have been easier. Cruel men are simple. You can hate them cleanly. Ethan wasn't cruel. He was proud and he was certain, and he had spent so many years being right about the things that mattered in his world that he'd forgotten there were other worlds and that his sister lived in one of them. He thought about her all afternoon. He remembered her as a little girl following him around the house with a notebook, writing down everything he said like it was scripture. He remembered how she used to ask him 1,000 questions about his deployments and how he used to wave her off, tell her it was classified, tell her she wouldn't understand, tell her to go read her books. He remembered the day he shipped out for BUD/S, and she'd hugged him so hard he thought she'd crack a rib, and she'd whispered, "I'm going to do something important too, Ethan, you'll see." He'd said, "I know you will, kiddo," and he'd meant it the way you mean a thing you don't actually believe. She'd gone to college, then graduate school. She'd disappeared into a world of clearances and classified work that Ethan never bothered to understand because in his mind, the real war was fought by men like him in the mud and the dark, and everything else was paperwork. He'd been at her doctoral defense. He remembered that now, sitting in the equipment room, the guilt rising in him like water. He'd flown in, sat in the back, understood nothing, checked his watch twice and left early to catch a flight back to base. She'd found him afterward, glowing still in her academic robes, and asked him what he thought. "Way over my head, kiddo," he'd said, kissing the top of her head. "But I'm proud of you, Dr. Walker. Fancy." He'd meant it as praise. He understood now, 17 years into a career of reading men's faces, that she'd heard it as dismissal. Way over my head, as in not my world, as in not real. "God," he said out loud to no one. His phone buzzed. A text from Mitchell. "Come to my office. We need to talk about your sister." Ethan's stomach tightened. He'd known Ryan Mitchell for 11 years. Mitchell didn't waste words and he didn't summon you to his office to chat. Commander Mitchell's office was small and spare the office of a man who had stopped caring about impressing anyone a long time ago. When Ethan walked in, Mitchell was standing at the window with his back to the door. "Sit down, Ethan." Ethan sat. Mitchell turned around. "I want to ask you something, and I want you to give me an honest answer. How much do you actually know about what your sister does?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. "She's an analyst, NSA, tactical intelligence. That's her title. That's not what she does." Mitchell came around and sat on the edge of his desk, looking down at Ethan the way an old teacher looks at a student he expects more from. 2 years ago, there was an operation. I can't tell you where. I can tell you that a 12-man team walked into a valley they'd been told was clear, and it wasn't clear, and 8 of them didn't walk out. You following me? "I heard about it," Ethan said quietly. Every operator had heard about it in the way they hear about the bad ones, in whispers, in the sudden silence that falls over a bar when someone starts to bring it up. "What you didn't hear," Mitchell said, "is that there was supposed to be a 13th voice on that operation. An analyst who'd flagged that valley 6 hours before the team went in, who wrote a report saying the intelligence had been compromised, that the whole thing smelled like a setup." Mitchell's jaw tightened. That report got buried because the operators on the ground had confidence in their intel, and the command element didn't want to slow down, and nobody wanted to listen to some analyst behind a screen who'd never held a rifle. Ethan felt cold. 8 men, Mitchell said, because nobody listened to the ghost. The word landed. Ethan looked up. That was Claire. "That was your sister." Mitchell nodded slowly. "She was junior then. Nobody knew her name. But she was right, and being right cost her more than being wrong ever could have, because she has to carry those 8 men for the rest of her life, knowing she saw it coming and couldn't make anyone hear her." He paused. "You know what her call sign was before all that? She didn't have one. Analysts don't get call signs. But after that valley, one of the survivors, a master chief with more combat time than you and me put together, walked into her office, and he said, 'You saw us. You were the only one who saw us. You were the ghost in the machine watching over us, and we didn't listen.' And he gave her that patch. Ghost Actual. Made it himself." Mitchell's voice was very quiet now. "That patch you held up over your head this morning and laughed at Senior Chief was earned in blood. Not her blood, theirs. And she wears it every single day, so she never forgets what happens when the operators don't listen to the analyst." Ethan couldn't speak. He was thinking about the laughter, the 11 seconds. He was thinking about his sister standing there dry-eyed, taking it because she'd learned a long time ago that this was what happened when she walked into a room full of men like her brother. He was thinking about the survivor who'd stitched those two words by hand and the 8 who hadn't survived, and the weight his sister carried into every briefing while men like Ethan held her name up as a punchline. "I didn't know," he said finally. It sounded pathetic even to him. "No," Mitchell said. "You didn't. And that's exactly the problem, Ethan. You've spent 17 years believing that the only people who matter in a fight are the ones holding the rifles. And I understand why. God knows you've earned that belief the hard way. But that belief is going to get people killed because the next war isn't going to be won by the man who kicks in the door. It's going to be won by the person who tells him which door not to kick in." He stood. "Your sister is the best I have ever seen, not the best analyst. The best. Full stop. And in about 10 hours, you're going to find out exactly what that means. So I'm giving you this now in private as a courtesy one operator to another. When she talks tomorrow, you listen. Because if you laugh at her again and she's right again, and men die because you didn't listen, you will never forgive yourself, and neither will I." Ethan walked out of that office a different man than the one who'd walked in. Not fixed, not humbled all the way through, not yet. Pride like his doesn't die in one conversation, but cracked. Cracked in a way that let the light in just a little for the first time in years. He didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bunk and he stared at the ceiling and he thought about all the times his sister had tried to tell him who she was and all the times he'd waved her off. He thought about "way over my head, kiddo." He thought about "this isn't a library." He thought about the 8 men in the valley, men he'd never met, dying because someone with his exact attitude had decided that the ghost behind the screen didn't know anything worth hearing. Around 3 in the morning, he got up and went to find her. He knew she'd be awake. Claire never slept before an operation, not really. He found her in the analytical suite alone, 3 screens glowing in front of her, a cold cup of coffee at her elbow. She didn't turn around when he came in. "Can't sleep either," she said. "No. You never could, before an op." She kept her eyes on the screens. "Mom used to say you'd wear a hole in the floor pacing, even when you were little, even before you knew what you were pacing about." Ethan pulled up a chair and sat down next to her. Not behind her. Next to her. He noticed her notice it. "Mitchell told me about the valley," he said. Her hands went still on the keyboard. "Claire, I didn't know." "Would it have mattered if you had?" she asked, and there was no bitterness in it, which was somehow worse than if there had been. "Be honest. If you'd walked in this morning knowing all of it, would you have laughed less? Or would you have just found a nicer way to not take me seriously?" Ethan wanted to say, of course it would have mattered, but he'd spent 17 years teaching young men that the first casualty in any fight is the comfortable lie you tell yourself. So he sat with the question, really sat with it, and then he said the hard thing. "I don't know," he said. "I want to say yes, but I don't know." For the first time all day, Claire looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her face softened just barely, because that answer, the honest one, was worth more to her than 1,000 easy apologies. "That's the truest thing you've said to me in 10 years, she said. They sat in silence for a while. On the screens, data scrolled past patterns Ethan couldn't read, a language his sister spoke fluently, and he couldn't even sound out. "Tell me what you're seeing," he said. "For real. Not the briefing version. The real version. I want to understand." And so she told him. She told him about the compound in the mountains and how the intelligence pointed to it like a neon sign. She told him about the way real terror networks moved in whispers and dead drops, and years of patient silence, and how nothing about this operation moved that way. She showed him a communication intercept and asked him what he noticed, and he said he didn't notice anything. And she said, "Exactly, it's too clean. Real chatter is messy. Real chatter has noise mistakes, human beings being human. This is what it looks like when somebody wants you to intercept it." "So what do you think is really happening?" Ethan asked. Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I think," she said slowly, "that Omar Rahman isn't in that compound. I think somebody very smart has spent months building a trail to that compound, knowing that eventually a team like Iron Viper would follow it. And I think the compound isn't the target. I think the compound is the bait." She turned to him. "But I don't have proof yet. And without proof, they're going to send you in. And Ethan, if I'm right, you're going to walk into that valley just like those 8 men walked into theirs. Because everyone's going to look at my analysis and see a ghost, and they're going to look at the operation and see a mission, and they're going to choose the mission. They always choose the mission. Ethan looked at his sister, at the exhaustion in her face, at the weight she carried, at the two words stitched onto the bag beside her, and he felt something in his chest he hadn't felt in a very long time. Not pride in himself, pride in her. "Then we get you your proof," he said. She blinked. "You've got what, 9 hours?" Ethan stood up, rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, the way he did before a fight. "So let's not waste them. Tell me what you need. I don't understand half of what's on those screens, but I understand the way these people fight. I've been in those mountains. Maybe there's something I know that your data doesn't. Maybe we're each holding half the picture." He looked at her. "That's the whole point, right? That's why they put us in the same room." Claire stared at her brother. For 34 years, she had wanted exactly this. She had wanted him to sit down next to her, to ask what she saw, to treat her not as a little sister to be protected, or a nuisance to be waved off, but as what she was. A professional, an equal, a weapon of a different kind. She had stopped believing it would ever happen. "Okay," she said, and her voice caught just slightly, just enough that only a brother would notice. "Okay, sit down. This is going to take a while, and you're going to have to actually listen." "I'm listening," Ethan said, and this time for the first time he meant it. They worked through the night. She taught him to read the patterns, or tried to, and he taught her the geography of the valley, the way the ridge lines channeled movement, the places a smart enemy would hide, and the places a desperate one would run. And somewhere in the small hours, as the coffee went cold and the screens burned their eyes, something clicked between them that had been broken for a very long time. At one point, Ethan pointed at a spot on the terrain map, a low structure near a water source at the edge of the target grid. "What's that?" Claire glanced at it. "Water treatment. Serves the whole regional population. Couple 100,000 people downstream." She dismissed it. "Irrelevant to the target. It's a civilian facility. Nobody's going to—" She stopped. She went very still. Ethan watched his sister's face change, watched the exhaustion burn off it in an instant, watched something ignite behind her eyes that he would remember for the rest of his life. "Claire," she didn't answer. Her hands were already flying across the keyboard, pulling up new windows, new data, cross-referencing, her lips moving silently as she worked. "Claire, what is it?" "Give me a second." Her voice had changed completely. Sharp now, urgent. "Give me a second, give me a second, give me a second." The screens flickered, and then something happened that made the blood drain from both their faces. The lights in the analytical suite flickered. The screens went dark, all three at once, and then flashed back to life, showing something neither of them had put there. A single line of text, white on black, pulsing slowly in the center of the display. "We see you, two ghost." Claire's hands froze over the keyboard. Ethan was already on his feet, one hand moving instinctively to a weapon that wasn't there. "What the hell is that, Claire? What is that?" She didn't answer him. She was staring at the screen at those 4 words, and for the first time since he'd walked into that briefing room and held her name up to be laughed at, Ethan Walker saw fear across his sister's face. Not panic. Claire didn't panic, but fear, cold and clear and controlled. "Ethan," she said very quietly without taking her eyes off the screen, "I need you to go get Commander Mitchell. Right now. Wake him up." "Claire, right now." She reached over and killed the main display, ripped up a cable free, isolated her own workstation with a speed that told him she'd trained for exactly this, for the moment when the ghost in the machine realized it wasn't alone in there. "They're not just baiting the operation, Ethan. They knew we'd have an analyst. They knew someone would see through it." Her jaw tightened. "They've been watching me watch them. And they just told me they know I'm getting close." Who's watching you?" Claire finally turned and looked at her brother, and the look on her face was one he'd never seen before, not on her, not on anyone. It was the look of someone who has just understood the true shape of the thing they're facing and found it much larger than they feared. "I don't know yet," she said, "but whoever they are, they're not hiding a man in a mountain compound." She looked back at the 4 glowing words. "They're planning something a lot worse, and they just wasted their one advantage by trying to scare me." A muscle worked in her jaw. "Because now I know they're afraid of what I'll find." The words on the screen pulsed once more and went dark. And in the silence that followed in the humming empty room at 3 in the morning, Ethan Walker looked at his little sister, the analyst he'd laughed at 12 hours before, and understood finally and completely that he had never in his life met anyone braver. "Go," Claire said. "Get Mitchell and Ethan." She was already turning back to her screens, already hunting, already the ghost hunting, the thing that had thought it could hunt her. "Tell him the operation is compromised. Tell him nobody moves until I know what these people are actually trying to do. Tell him Ghost Actual said so." Ethan looked at the patch on her bag. Ghost Actual. 2 words he'd held up over his head and laughed at. He wasn't laughing now. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and he ran. Ethan Walker ran through the dark corridors of Camp Pendleton faster than he'd run in years, and every step of the way 4 white words burned behind his eyes. "We see you too, Ghost." He didn't knock on Commander Mitchell's door. He hit it with his shoulder and it flew open, and Mitchell was already sitting up in the bunk, hand halfway to the weapon on his nightstand, because 11 years of command had taught him that nobody bursts into a commander's quarters at 3 in the morning with good news. "Ethan, what?" "They're in her system." Ethan was breathing hard. Somebody just talked to Claire through her own screens, called her by her call sign, told her they see her. Mitchell was on his feet before Ethan finished the sentence, pulling on his boots, and the calm in the older man's movements was somehow more frightening than panic would have been. "Say that again. Slower." "She was working. 3 of us couldn't sleep, so we were working the target together, and she found something about a water facility, and the second she started digging, the screens went black, and a message came up." Ethan's jaw was tight. It said, "We see you too, Ghost. She's isolating her workstation now. She told me to wake you. She said the operation is compromised and nobody moves until she knows what these people are actually trying to do." For a moment, Mitchell didn't move. Then he grabbed his sidearm and his radio, and he looked at Ethan with an expression that Ethan would think about for a long time afterward. "2 years ago," Mitchell said quietly, "she told me she smelled a setup and I had proof but no time. This time she's got time but no proof, and now they've made contact." He headed for the door. "Ethan, understand me. If they broke into a classified NSA workstation on a secure military installation to send your sister a threat, then we are not dealing with some cave network hiding a man in the mountains. We are dealing with something that has resources, reach, and a reason to be terrified of exactly one person on this base." "Claire," Ethan said. "Your baby sister," Mitchell said, and there wasn't a trace of mockery in it. "Move." They found her exactly where Ethan had left her, but everything else about the room had changed. Claire had killed every screen but one. She'd physically disconnected her primary machine from the network and rerouted through a small, hardened laptop she'd pulled from her bag, and her fingers were moving across it with a speed and precision that made Ethan realize he'd spent his whole life underestimating what his sister's hands could do. "Talk to me, Dr. Walker," Mitchell said. Claire didn't look up. 2 hours ago, I would have told you the compound in the mountains was a decoy, and I couldn't prove it. 90 seconds ago, they proved it for me." Her voice was flat, controlled, but Ethan could hear the current running under it. "You don't break into a system to threaten someone who's wrong. You break in to stop someone who's close." "Close to what?" "That's what I'm finding out." Her eyes flicked across the screen. "When they came into my system, they made a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake. They wanted to scare me, so they pushed a message through, and to push that message, they had to open a door. And when you open a door, even for a second, someone standing on the other side can see your hallway." A thin, cold smile touched the corner of her mouth. "I was standing on the other side." Mitchell leaned in. "You traced them." "Not all the way, not yet, but I got a direction." She pulled up a fragment of routing data, a chain of numbers that meant nothing to Ethan, and clearly meant everything to her. "The signal that hit my workstation didn't come from Afghanistan. It bounced through 6 countries to look like it did. But the origin timing, the latency signature, the way the packets breathed." She stopped herself, remembering who she was talking to. "They're not in the mountains. Whoever's running this is a lot closer than the target package wants us to think. And the water facility I flagged an hour ago just went from a footnote to the center of everything." "Why the water facility?" Ethan asked. "You said it was civilian, irrelevant." "I said it was irrelevant to the mission we were handed. Claire finally looked at her brother, and her eyes were bright and hard. But what if the mission we were handed was never the real mission, Ethan? Think about it. Someone builds a perfect trail to a mountain compound. They know a team like Iron Viper will follow it. They know an analyst will vet it. And they know that when the team goes in the whole intelligence apparatus, all the eyes, all the satellites, all the drones, all the attention will be pointed at that mountain. She let it hang. So what happens to everything that isn't the mountain? The room went silent. It goes dark, Mitchell said slowly. It goes dark, Claire agreed. You want to hit a target nobody's watching. You give everybody something else to watch. The mountain compound isn't the trap for Iron Viper. Iron Viper is the distraction. We're the shiny thing they wave in front of the whole United States military so that everyone looks left while they go right. Her hands were moving again. And they just told me by accident that going right means the water. Ethan felt the floor tilt under him. 8 hours ago, he'd been laughing. Now he was standing in a humming room at 3 a.m, watching his sister unspool a conspiracy that could kill more people than every operation of his career combined. How many people does that facility serve? He asked. Claire didn't hesitate. 240,000, give or take. It's the primary water treatment and distribution hub for the entire regional population downstream of the target grid. Hospitals, schools, a refugee settlement of about 40,000 on the eastern edge, mostly women and children, who fled the fighting further north. Her jaw tightened. If you wanted to kill the largest number of the most vulnerable people in that entire province, and you wanted the world to blame it on someone else, that facility is exactly where you do it. Mitchell picked up his radio. I'm waking up the whole command element. No. Claire's voice cracked like a whip, and both men turned. She softened it immediately, but the urgency stayed. Not yet. Sir, listen to me. They just watched me trace them. They know I saw the door. Right now, this second, they're deciding whether their plan is still viable or whether they need to move it up. If you light up this base with a full command recall, they'll know we're on to them and they'll accelerate. Whatever timeline they had, it just got shorter the moment they contacted me. If you spook them, it might get shorter than we can survive. Mitchell lowered the radio. He looked at her for a long moment. So what do you want to do? And that was the moment Ethan realized later that everything truly changed. Because Commander Ryan Mitchell, 45 years old, a career operator with more time in command than Claire had been alive as an adult, looked at a 34-year-old analyst and asked her what she wanted to do. Not told. He'd stopped being the man in charge of the room and started being the man who knew who the room should be listening to. I want 45 minutes, Claire said. Give me 45 minutes of total quiet, no recall, no chatter, nothing that tips them off, and I'll get you the whole picture. Who they are, where they're operating from, what the timeline is, and what they're planning to do to that facility. And then you can wake up the entire chain of command and hand them a target instead of a mystery. She met his eyes. But I need those 45 minutes, and I need them to think I got scared and backed off. How do we make them think that? Claire was already typing. I go quiet, I stop probing, I pull back to my own network, and I make it look like I ran home and locked the door. Meanwhile, I use a channel they don't know I have, and I keep hunting from the outside. She glanced up. The one thing they didn't count on is that when they threatened me, they made me angry. And I am very, very good at this when I'm angry. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. You got your 45 minutes, Mitchell said. Ethan, you're with her, whatever she needs. I'll be right outside coordinating quietly, and the second she has something, we go loud. Understood. Understood, Ethan said. Mitchell moved to the door, then stopped. He looked back at Claire. For the record, Dr. Walker, 2 years ago, I couldn't save 8 men because the system wouldn't listen to you fast enough. I've thought about that valley every single day since. His voice was rough. I'm not making that mistake twice. You talk, this whole base listens. That it's a promise. He walked out, and then it was just the two of them again, brother and sister, and a clock running down. The next 45 minutes were the fastest of Ethan Walker's life, and he barely understood any of them. He watched his sister work like a surgeon, like a musician, like something he didn't have a word for. She talked to herself in fragments, muttering about signatures and handshakes and origin points, and every few minutes she'd hit something and go completely silent, her whole body still except for her eyes, and then she'd exhale and start moving again. Talk to me, Ethan said at one point. Even if I don't get it, talk out loud. It helps you think right. You always talked out loud when we were kids. She glanced at him, surprised he remembered. It does help. Okay. She kept typing. The message that hit my screen. To send it, they had to be inside a very specific piece of infrastructure. Not my machine directly, the relay that feeds my machine. That relay is on a closed loop. There are maybe 40 people in the world with legitimate access to it. Her hand slowed, which means either they cracked something that shouldn't be crackable, or she stopped. Ethan watched her face change. Or somebody with legitimate access let them in. Her voice dropped. Ethan, that message came through clean. Too clean. No forced entry, no brute force, no signature of a break. It came through like it had a key. She turned and looked at him. This isn't just an enemy outside the wire. Somebody on the inside is helping them. The words landed in Ethan's chest like a stone. You're saying there's a traitor. Here. On our side. I'm saying somebody with access handed these people the ability to reach into a secure NSA workstation and threaten me by name. Claire's jaw was set, which means when Mitchell wakes up the command element, one of the people we brief could be the person feeding the enemy everything we say. She turned back to the screen. So now I have to find them and I have to do it in, she checked the time, 31 minutes, and I have to do it without anyone knowing I'm looking, because the moment the traitor knows we know, they'll pull the trigger on the whole thing early. Ethan felt something cold and clarifying settle over him. This was a feeling he knew. This was the feeling right before a firefight, when the world narrows down to the next 30 seconds. Except he'd always felt it with a rifle in his hands. Now he was feeling it standing next to a woman with a keyboard, and the stakes were 100 times higher than any door he'd ever kicked. Then find them, he said. I'll watch the door. Claire hunted. At the 20-minute mark, she found the first thread, a login on the relay system time-stamped 4 days ago from an account that had no business touching it. She followed it, and it dissolved into nothing, scrubbed clean, and she cursed under her breath, the first crack in her calm all night. They're good, she said. Whoever this is, they're really good. They cleaned up after themselves. Everywhere I look, there's just the shape of where they used to be. So how do you catch someone who cleans up? You stop looking for what they did. Claire pulled up something new, and you start looking for what they had to leave behind. She began cross-referencing, her fingers a blur. You can scrub a login. You can't scrub the fact that the system had to authenticate you. Somewhere there's a record that a valid credential was used even if you erased who used it and when. It's like she searched for something he'd understand. It's like a guy walks into a locked building and steals everything and wipes his fingerprints. But he can't wipe the fact that the door was unlocked from the inside. The lock remembers being opened even if it doesn't remember who opened it. So the lock remembers. The lock always remembers. Her eyes narrowed. And I know how to ask it. At the 15-minute mark, she found the second thread, and this one didn't dissolve. Ethan saw it happen. He saw his sister go very still, saw her lean forward, saw her read something on the screen 3 times to be sure. And then she said a single word, quiet and shaken, that told him she'd found something even worse than she'd feared. No, she whispered. Claire, what? The credential. She didn't take her eyes off the screen. The one they used to get into the relay. It's not a fake. It's not stolen from some low-level tech. Her voice was barely audible. It's a command-level credential, Ethan. High clearance. The kind of access maybe a dozen people on this entire operation have. Ethan's blood ran cold. Who's? I can't tell yet. The name's masked behind another layer. She was working faster now, her breath coming shorter. But I can tell the level, and at that level on this operation, she stopped. She looked up at him, and there was something almost like grief on her face. Ethan, at that level, it's someone in the room, someone who was in that briefing yesterday, someone who laughed at my patch, or someone who sat there and watched them laugh. She swallowed. The person helping the enemy was standing 10 feet away from me 12 hours ago. The clock ticked. 14 minutes left. Can you unmask the name? Ethan asked. Yes, but it'll take time I don't have, and the second I start peeling that last layer, there's a chance it trips an alert on their end. Claire pressed her fingers to her temples. If I go after the name, I might lose the plan. If I go after the plan, I saved the 200,000 people, but I let the traitor walk. I can't do both in 14 minutes. And Ethan Walker, the operator, the man who'd spent 17 years making exactly this kind of decision in exactly this kind of pressure, said the thing his sister needed to hear. Save the people, he said. You always save the people first. The traitor can't hide forever, but those 200,000 souls don't get a second chance. Go after the plan, Claire. Get the target. We'll hunt the rat after. Claire looked at her brother, and for a heartbeat, something passed between them that neither of them had felt since they were children. Trust. Clean, complete, uncomplicated trust. Okay, she said, the plan it is. She abandoned the name and threw everything into the water facility. And what she found in the next 10 minutes turned Ethan's stomach. It's not an explosion, she said, reading fast. That's what I got wrong. I was thinking like an operator, thinking they'd blow it up. They were not going to blow it up. An explosion is loud. An explosion gets investigated. An explosion looks like an attack. Her voice was rising with a terrible clarity. They're going to poison it. Poison the water. The facility processes and distributes water for the whole region. If you introduce the right agent at the right point in the treatment cycle, past the last filtration stage, it goes straight into the distribution network. No filter catches it. No taste, no color, no warning. It reaches every tap, every well feed, every hospital IV line, every bottle filled at that refugee camp. Claire's hands were shaking now, just slightly, the first time he'd seen it all night. And by the time the first symptoms show up, everyone's already been exposed. Everyone. It wouldn't look like an attack, Ethan. It would look like an outbreak, a tragedy, a natural disaster. And whoever's behind it walks away clean while 250,000 people. She couldn't finish it. Ethan put his hand on her shoulder. Breathe. You're the only one who sees this. If you break, nobody sees it. Breathe. She breathed. She nodded. She kept going. 9 minutes. There's a delivery mechanism, she said. They can't just walk in. The facility has security controls, a whole operational staff. So they need someone inside, or they need to take it, or... She pulled up something new and her face went pale. Oh no. What? The mission. Her voice was hollow. Iron Viper's mission. The compound is 11 kilometers from the water facility. She was doing the math out loud now, and the math was horrifying. When Iron Viper hits the compound, the entire regional security apparatus responds to that location. Every soldier, every checkpoint, every patrol, they all surge toward the firefight. And for a window of maybe 40 minutes, the whole area around the water facility empties out because everyone with a gun runs toward the shooting. She looked up stricken. Ethan, the operation isn't just a distraction to keep the satellites busy. The operation is the delivery mechanism. Iron Viper hitting that compound is what clears the path to the water. They need you to attack. Your mission is the key that unlocks the door. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Ethan had ever heard. He understood now fully completely the shape of the thing. If Iron Viper went in, they didn't just walk into a trap. They became the trap. Every man on his team doing their job perfectly would be the reason 240,000 people died. And they'd never know. They'd come home believing they'd run a mission, and downstream a whole province would be dying, and no one would ever connect the two. We have to stop the operation, Ethan said. We have to do more than stop it. Claire was already thinking 3 moves ahead. If we just cancel, they'll know we figured it out, and they'll find another key, another distraction, another day. This is our one chance to catch them in motion, because right now they think it's still on. Right now, somewhere near that facility, there's a team getting into position, waiting for Iron Viper to kick off the diversion. Her eyes locked onto his. We don't cancel the operation. We turn it around. We let them believe the diversion is coming, and we send Iron Viper to the real target instead. We catch them with the poison in their hands. Ethan stared at his sister. You want to redirect a live special operations mission in the field against the enemy's own plan based on 40 minutes of analysis with a traitor in the command element who could blow the whole thing. Yes, Claire said, that's exactly what I want to do. And Ethan Walker, who 12 hours earlier had called this woman's world paperwork, who had held her name up and laughed, felt a grin spread across his face that had nothing to do with humor and everything to do with the cold, savage joy an operator feels when a hopeless fight suddenly has a shape. Then let's go wake up Mitchell, he said, and let's turn their own trap around and shove it right back down their throats. Claire hit save on everything. She encrypted it, packaged it, made 3 copies across 3 separate systems, so no single point of failure and no single traitor could make it disappear. Then she stood up, and for the first time since the message had appeared, she looked less afraid and more like something Ethan had only ever seen in the hardest men he'd served with. She looked ready. "One problem," she said as they moved for the door. "Just one, I'll take one. The traitor." She stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Ethan, the second we brief the command element, the traitor hears everything. They'll know we cracked the plan. They'll warn the field team, and the whole thing collapses." She looked up at him. "We can't brief the room. We can only brief people we're absolutely certain about. And right now, the only 2 people on this entire base I am absolutely certain about are you and Commander Mitchell." Ethan absorbed that. "So we run this off the books, 3 of us, against an enemy that's inside our own house." "3 of us," Claire said, "against a plan to murder 250,000 people with a clock. We can't see a traitor, we can't name, and no room for a single mistake." She took a breath. "Ethan, I need to ask you something, and I need the true answer, not the brother answer." "Ask." "Yesterday, you'd have never followed my lead. Yesterday, I was the kid sister with the funny patch." Her eyes searched his. "If I'm wrong about any piece of this, if my analysis has one flaw, men could die and I will have talked you into it. Do you trust me? Not love me. Anybody can love their sister. Do you trust me with your team, with your life, with 250,000 lives right now tonight?" And Ethan Walker didn't hesitate. "Ghost actual," he said, and there was no mockery left in it, only something like reverence. "I trust you more than I trust myself. Now let's go save these people." They found Mitchell in the corridor, and the second he saw their faces, he knew. "You've got it," he said. "We've got all of it," Claire said, "and it's worse than anything we imagined. And I need to tell you the one thing you're not going to want to hear before I tell you the rest." "Say it." "There's a traitor in your command element. Command level access. They let the enemy into my system." Claire held his gaze. "Which means I can't brief the room, and neither can you, because the traitor is in the room. Whatever we do next, we do it with 3 people. You, me, and Ethan. Anyone else we bring in, we're gambling their integrity against 250,000 lives." Mitchell went very still. For a moment, Ethan thought he might argue, might insist on protocol, on the chain of command, on all the rules that a career like his was built on. Every instinct in a commander screams against going around the system. Every fiber. But then Mitchell looked at Claire, and Ethan watched the older man make the hardest decision of his career in about 4 seconds. 2 years ago, Mitchell said quietly, "I followed protocol. I sent it up the chain, and I waited for the system to work, and the system was too slow, and 8 men died in a valley because I trusted the process instead of the person who saw the truth." His jaw tightened. "Not tonight. Tonight I trust the ghost. What do you need?" Claire didn't waste a second. "I need Iron Viper spun up on a modified target package. I need it to look, anyone watching, exactly like they're prepping for the compound. Same timeline, same insertion, same everything. But the real objective is the water facility. When they insert, they don't hit the mountain. They come down on the facility and they catch the delivery team in the act." She checked the time. "And I need it fast because the enemy's window opens the moment the original mission was scheduled to go, which by my math is in about 5 hours and 10 minutes. 5 hours. Mitchell exhaled. "To rebuild a mission from scratch in secret with a traitor watching and get it right the first time, because there's no second try." "Yes. And if we're wrong," Claire didn't flinch. "If I'm wrong, we send an elite team down on a civilian water facility. For no reason, we torch my career and both of yours, and we look like paranoid fools." She lifted her chin. "But I'm not wrong. I've been building this picture for 72 hours, and I finally have every piece. I'm not wrong, Commander. I'd stake those 240,000 lives on it, because that's exactly what I'm doing." Mitchell looked at her for a long, long moment. Then he turned to Ethan. "Senior Chief, you've served under me for 11 years. You've never once let me down into the field. So I'm going to ask you directly, and your answer decides this." He squared up to him. "Your sister wants to take your team off the books against a redrawn target on her word alone, with lives in the balance that neither of us can count. You know her better than anyone alive. Is she right? And Ethan Walker looked at his little sister, the analyst he'd laughed at, the ghost who'd seen what an entire intelligence apparatus had missed the bravest person he had ever met. She's right, Ethan said. Bet the whole thing on it. She's right. Something shifted in Mitchell's face, a decision locking into place. Then God help us all, 'cause wow, we're doing it. He keyed his radio, then stopped and looked at Claire. How do we brief the team? They can't know it's off the books. They can't know about the traitor. They'll follow me anywhere but if they sense something's wrong. They can't sense anything, Claire agreed. So we don't tell them anything different. We tell them the target package was updated. Happens all the time, right? Intel refines targets shift. We give them a clean, confident, normal mission brief for the water facility, and we let them believe it's just how the op evolved. She paused. But Commander, there's someone who does have to know the truth. The team on the ground has to understand they might be walking into the enemy's own delivery team, an enemy that might have a chemical agent on site. They have to be ready for that, and they have to have someone talking them through it in real time, someone who can see the whole board, someone who, she stopped. Someone who what? Ethan said. Claire looked at him. Someone who's going to be in their ears the entire time, reading the field, calling the threats, rerouting them around the ambushes the enemy set up. Because make no mistake, the enemy set up ambushes on the path to that facility too, in case anyone ever did figure it out. There's a second layer of defense around the real target, and the only way through it is if someone with the whole picture is talking the team through every single step. Her voice was steady. That someone is me. Ghost Actual, running Iron Viper live on the ground for the length of the entire operation. Every man's life in my hands, one bad call away from a firefight I sent them into. Ethan felt his throat tighten. You've never run a live op before. No, Claire said. I've never been allowed to. 2 years ago, I saw a valley and nobody let me speak and 8 men died. Her eyes were bright and fierce. Tonight, I'm going to speak, and this time everyone's going to listen, and nobody is going to die. Mitchell keyed his radio. Iron Viper Actual, this is Mitchell. Wake up your team. Full operational recall right now. Target package has been updated, and we're accelerating the timeline. I want every man in the ready room in 20 minutes. He released the key. Then he looked at Claire, and for the first time all night, the ghost of a smile touched the old commander's face. You heard the lady. Let's go turn their trap around. The next 3 hours moved like a war compressed into minutes. Ethan watched his sister transform. Gone was any trace of the quiet woman who'd stood dry-eyed while a room laughed at her name. In her place was something he barely recognized, a commander in her own right, building an entire operation from nothing, briefing hardened operators on threats they couldn't see, mapping a route through an ambush network she'd reverse-engineered from fragments of intercepted data. The team took to her faster than Ethan expected. Operators can smell competence the way sharks smell blood, and within 20 minutes of Claire opening her mouth, the men who'd laughed at her patch yesterday were leaning forward, taking notes, asking her questions and hanging on her answers. She was that good. She was so good it frightened him. At one point, one of the younger operators, a kid named Reyes, who'd laughed loudest at the briefing, raised his hand. Dr. Walker, ma'am, yesterday the patch thing. Forget it, Claire said, not unkindly, not looking up from the terrain model. We don't have time for it, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that in about 4 hours, I'm going to be the voice in your ear, and when I tell you to stop, you stop, and when I tell you to move, you move, and if you trust me, you're going to come home. That's the only thing between us that matters now. Everything else we sort out over a beer when this is done. Reyes nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. Ghost Actual. And this time when he said the call sign, there wasn't a shred of mockery in it. There was something closer to hope. But even as the operation came together, the clock kept running and the traitor was still out there, still watching, still with command-level access to everything. And Claire knew it, and it gnawed at her. 2 hours before launch, she pulled Ethan and Mitchell aside. We have a problem I've been not saying out loud, she said. The traitor doesn't know we redirected the mission. Good. But the traitor does know I traced them last night, which means the traitor knows I'm dangerous, which means at some point, probably soon, the traitor is going to try to take me out of the equation. Ethan's whole body went tense. Take you out, how? I don't know. Discredit me. Sideline me. Have me pulled off the operation on some pretext. Claire's jaw was set. Or something less subtle. Ethan, I'm the only person who's put this whole picture together. I'm the single point of failure in their exposure. If I go down, the operation goes back to being a mystery and they get to try again another day. From their side, I'm the one loose thread and smart people cut loose threads. Mitchell's face darkened. You think they'd move on you here? On base. I think a traitor who let the enemy into a secure NSA workstation is capable of anything. Claire looked between the two of them. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because from now until this operation is over, I need one of you within arm's reach of me at all times. Not because I'm afraid, because I am the mission now, and if they get to me, everyone downstream of that water facility dies. And that was when it happened. The moment Ethan Walker would remember for the rest of his life. Because just as Claire finished speaking, Mitchell's radio crackled, and a voice came through calm and official and utterly poisonous. Command element to Commander Mitchell. Sir, we have a situation. We've received a flag from higher regarding the reliability of your embedded analyst, Dr. Walker. There are questions about her mental fitness for this operation. Recommend she be pulled from the mission pending review. We have personnel standing by to escort her from the operations floor. The three of them went absolutely still. Ethan felt it land in his gut like a physical blow. There it was. The traitor's move, exactly as Claire had predicted to the minute. Discredit her, pull her, cut the one loose thread. And it had come through official channels dressed up in the language of concern, impossible to refuse without insubordination, timed perfectly, to strip the operation of the only person who could see the whole board. Mitchell looked at Claire. Claire looked back at him and she didn't say a word. She didn't plead. She didn't argue. She just held his eyes, and in that look was everything the valley. 2 years ago, the 8 men, the patch stitched in blood, the 240,000 souls downstream who would never know her name. And Ethan realized in that suspended second that this was the whole thing. This was the entire story compressed into a single choice. The system was telling Ryan Mitchell to remove the ghost. Every rule, every regulation, every chain of command instinct in his body screamed to comply. That's how the valley happened. That's how it always happened. The system silences the person who sees the truth and calls it procedure. Mitchell raised his radio to his mouth. Ethan held his breath. Command element, Mitchell said, and his voice was iron. This is Commander Mitchell. Dr. Walker is not being pulled. She is running point on this operation with my full authority and my full confidence. Any escort personnel that approach my operations floor will be turned around at the door. And you can tell whoever sent that flag. He paused and his eyes never left Claire's. That I said if they've got a problem with my analyst, they can bring it to me personally after the operation in writing with their name on it. He released the key. Mitchell out. There was a long silence on the radio. And in that silence, Claire Walker, who had stood dry-eyed while a whole room laughed at her, who had carried 8 dead men for 2 years, who had just been threatened by an enemy, through her own screens and betrayed by someone wearing her own uniform, felt something crack open in her chest. You just put your career on the line, she said quietly. I put my career on the line the second I decided to trust you, Mitchell said. This is just the paperwork. He almost smiled. Besides, that flag just told us something. Ethan caught it too. It told us the traitor's scared. It told us the traitor is scared. It told us the traitor has enough juice to push a fitness flag through higher channels, and Claire's eyes narrowed, her mind already racing. It told us the traitor just moved, which means the traitor just left a fresh trail. A slow, dangerous light came into her face. They got impatient. They tried to pull me at the last minute, and to do that, they had to touch the system again. And every time they touch the system, they leave a little more of themselves behind. Ethan felt the shift in the room. You can trace this one. This one came through official channels, thinking it was safe, thinking I'd be gone before I could look. Claire was already moving back toward her workstation. But I'm not gone, and I'm going to follow that flag all the way back to the hand that sent it. She sat down, cracked her knuckles, and her fingers found the keys. Whoever you are, she said softly to no one, and to everyone, you just made your last mistake. Mitchell put a hand on Ethan's shoulder and steered him a step away while Claire worked. Your sister, Mitchell said quietly, watching her, is the most dangerous person on this base, and she does it without ever touching a weapon. He shook his head slowly. Yesterday you held that patch over your head and laughed. Today she's carrying an entire operation, 250,000 lives, and a traitor hunt on her shoulders, and she hasn't cracked once. He looked at Ethan. You want to know what real strength is, Senior Chief? It's not the man who kicks in the door. It's the woman who's got the whole world on her back and keeps typing anyway. Ethan couldn't answer. He was watching his sister hunt, watching those 2 words on her patch ghost. Actual catch the light and thinking about how badly he'd wanted to be the strong one. His whole life, the operator, the tip of the spear, and how he was only now understanding that the strongest person he'd ever known had been sitting quietly behind a screen the entire time, seeing everything, saying nothing, waiting for anyone to finally listen. At Claire's workstation, the pieces were coming together fast now. The flag originated from a command terminal, she murmured, tracking it. Not remote, not spoofed, on base. Physical access. Whoever sent it was sitting at a real desk on this installation less than 15 minutes ago. Her hands slowed, and it routed through the same relay as the message last night. The same door, same key. She leaned in, which means it's the same person. The traitor and the one who threatened me are the same. Not 2 problems. 1. Can you get the name? Ethan asked. Claire pulled up the last layer of the masked identity behind the command credential and began to peel it back. Ethan watched her face as the mask dissolved character by character. He watched the color drain from it. He watched her stop breathing. Claire, she didn't answer. Claire, who is it? She turned around slowly. And the look on her face was one he'd never seen, not last night, when the message appeared, not 2 years ago at the funeral, never. It was the look of someone who has just seen the ground open under everything they believed to be solid. Ethan, she said, and her voice was barely a whisper. The credential. The name behind the flag. The person who's been feeding the enemy this whole time. Who is it? Claire looked at the screen one more time as if hoping it would change. It didn't. It's someone we trusted, she said. It's someone in this building right now. And they know I just found them. Say the name Claire. Ethan's voice was low and dangerous. Right now. She looked up at him, and her hands were shaking again, that same fine tremor he'd seen when she'd first understood the water plan. Colonel David Hans. For a moment, the name meant nothing. Then it landed, and Ethan actually took a step back. No, he said. No, not Hans. Command level credential. Physical terminal access. Same relay both times. Claire's voice was flat with the effort of holding it steady. Ethan, the math doesn't care who we like. It's him. Mitchell had gone gray. David Hans has served this country for 26 years. I've had dinner at his house. My kids call him Uncle Dave. He shook his head hard like a man trying to wake up. There has to be another explanation. Somebody stole his credential. Somebody cloned it. Analysts get things wrong. Claire, you said it yourself last night. I said the intelligence on the compound felt wrong, and I was right. Claire stood up so she could look him in the eye. Commander, I know what this costs you. I know you love that man, but I have 3 separate confirmations. The credential that let the enemy into my system, the credential that pushed the flag to pull me off this operation 15 minutes ago, and the credential that accessed the original target package before it was ever built. All 3 are the same. All 3 are Hans. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. But he is the traitor, and he is in this building, and the clock is still running. The words hung in the air, and Ethan watched 2 men's worlds break in real time. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was worse than betrayal. Colonel David Hans was the officer who'd signed off on the original operation. Hans was the one who'd pushed the compound target up the chain. Hans had sat in the back of that briefing room yesterday while the whole team laughed at Claire's patch. And he'd said nothing, and now Ethan understood the silence differently. Hans hadn't been indifferent to the mockery. Hans had been relieved by it. Every man who laughed at Ghost Actual was one more man who wouldn't take her seriously when she started seeing the truth. He engineered it, Ethan said slowly, the pieces locking into place. The whole thing, he didn't just leak it. He built it. He picked the compound. He picked our team. He picked the timeline. His hands curled into fists. He picked us to be the key that unlocks the door to that water facility. He looked me in the eye yesterday and shook my hand, and the whole time he was planning to use my team to murder 250,000 people. And he almost pulled it off, Claire said quietly. He would have pulled it off if 3 of us hadn't been unable to sleep last night, if I hadn't flagged that facility as a footnote, if they hadn't gotten cocky and sent me that message. She swallowed. We are standing on the thinnest margin I've ever seen in my life, and it's about to get thinner because Hans just tried to pull me and it didn't work, which means right now, this second, he knows his flag failed. He knows Mitchell protected me, and a smart trader who's been made will do exactly one thing. Accelerate, Mitchell said. He'll accelerate. Claire was already moving. He can't get me pulled, so he has to assume I'll expose him. His whole operation depends on nobody knowing the water is the target until it's too late. If he thinks I'm about to blow it, his only play is to trigger the field team early before we can redirect Iron Viper, before we can warn anyone downstream. She checked the time. We had 5 hours. We do not have 5 hours anymore. The moment that flag failed, we started losing time we can't count. Mitchell's jaw was working. Ethan could see the war inside him, the 26 years of friendship crashing against the 240,000 strangers. And he watched the commander make the choice again, the harder choice, the one the Valley had taught him. We arrest him, Mitchell said. Now, before he can trigger anything. I put him in a cell and this whole thing stops. No, Claire's voice cracked like ice. Commander, no, think. If you arrest Hans, the field team loses contact with their handler, and a field team that suddenly loses contact with its handler assumes the operation is blown and executes its fallback. What's the fallback for a team about to poison a water supply? She didn't wait for an answer. They dump the agent and run. They don't wait for the perfect window. They don't wait for Iron Viper's diversion. They just poison the water and disappear. If you arrest Hans, you don't stop the attack. You start it. Mitchell froze with his hand on his radio. He's a dead man's switch, Ethan breathed. As long as he's free and thinks he's winning, the field team waits for the signal. The second we touch him, the field team panics and dumps the poison. Which means we can't arrest him, Claire said. We can't even let him know we know. We have to let Colonel David Hans walk around this base believing he's still in control, believing his flag maybe just got delayed by a stubborn commander, believing his plan is still on track right up until the moment Iron Viper is on top of that field team with the agent in their hands. She looked between the two men. We have to smile at the man who's trying to kill 250,000 people. We have to shake his hand. And we have to do it perfectly because if he reads one flicker on any of our faces, everyone downstream dies. The silence that followed was absolute. You're asking us to play cards with a monster, Mitchell said quietly. I'm asking us to run the longest con of our lives against the best positioned trader I've ever seen, Claire said, and we have to win it in the next few hours with no rehearsal and no second chance. She looked at Ethan, and it means something else too. Something I don't want to say. Say it. It means Hans has to stay in the loop. Her voice dropped. He's the officer of record on this operation. He'll be in the operations center when Iron Viper launches. He has to be, or he'll know something's wrong. Which means the entire time I'm running this op, calling the shots, redirecting the team to the real target, the traitor is going to be standing 10 feet behind me, watching my screen, listening to every word I say into that headset. She met Ethan's eyes. I have to run the most important operation of my life with the enemy reading over my shoulder. And I have to make him believe every single second that I'm sending Iron Viper to the compound when I'm actually sending them to catch his field team red-handed. Ethan felt something cold move through him. How is that even possible? He'll see the coordinates. He'll hear you talking to the team. That's the part I have to solve in the next 30 minutes, Claire said. And I don't have it yet. That was when the clock became a living thing in the room. Because Claire sat back down and she started to build the impossible. A way to run one operation on the surface, the one Hans could see and hear the diversion to the compound, while running the real operation underneath it. The strike on the water facility invisible to the one man who mattered. Ethan watched her work, and he understood for the first time in his life what his sister actually did for a living. It wasn't paperwork. It was war. A kind of war he'd never learned to fight, fought entirely in the space between what people believe and what is true, and his sister moved through that space like he moved through a firefight. I can do it, she said finally 20 minutes later, and there was a fierce, exhausted triumph in her voice. I can do it, but it's going to take all three of us, and it can't fail even once. Tell us, Mitchell said. 2 comms channels, one open, one hidden. The open channel is the show. Everything Hans sees and hears goes through the open channel, and on the open channel, this is a textbook compound assault. Coordinates to the mountain, chatter about the compound, everything he expects. Her hands moved across the keyboard as she spoke, building it. The hidden channel is the truth. It's a burst channel encrypted that Hans doesn't know exists and can't monitor because he doesn't have the key. On the hidden channel, I give Iron Viper the real target, the real route, the real threats. The team runs the real operation on the hidden channel while Hans watches me run a fake one on the open channel. Ethan's mind was racing to keep up. But the team, they'll be hearing two versions. How do they know which one is real? Because I brief them before they go dark. Claire's jaw was set. Before insertion, face to face, I tell them everything on the open channel is theater for a traitor in the room. The hidden channel is your life. When the two conflict, the hidden channel is real every time, no exceptions. If Ghost Actual says compound on the open net and water facility on the burst net, you go to the water facility and you never question it. She looked up. It means those men have to trust me completely. It means they have to ignore an entire fake operation being narrated in their ears and follow only the voice on the secret channel. One man forgets, one man reacts to the wrong net, and the whole thing unravels. That's a lot to put on them, Mitchell said. It's everything to put on them, Claire agreed. And that's why I need you to sell it, Commander. When you brief the team, you tell them there's an operational security element in play, that some of what they'll hear is deliberate misdirection, and that Ghost Actual has the real picture. They trust you. If you tell them to follow my burst net, they'll follow it into hell. She paused. And Ethan, you're the last piece. Name it. You're not going to be in the operations center. Claire held his gaze. You're going to be on the ground with the team, because I need one person down there who knows the entire truth, who knows about Hans, who knows about the two channels, who can hold the team together if something goes sideways and I lose comms. Her voice softened just slightly. I need my brother on the ground, Ethan. I need to know that if everything I built collapses, there's someone down there who understands the whole board and can finish it without me. Ethan looked at his sister for a long moment. 12 hours ago, he'd have said something about how he was the operator and she was the analyst, how the field was his world and the screen was hers. Now he understood there was no such line. There never had been. It had all been one fight the whole time, and they'd just been fighting it from different rooms. I'll be on the ground, he said. You put me where you need me, and you talk me through it, and I'll trust the ghost. He almost smiled. God help me, I'll trust the ghost with my whole team's lives. With your life, Claire corrected quietly. You'll be on the point. If I miss an ambush, you're the one who walks into it. With my life, Ethan said, and he didn't blink. Ghost Actual has the con. Let's go. They had their plan. Now they had to survive putting it into motion, and the first test came faster and harder than any of them expected. Because as the three of them moved toward the operations center, Colonel David Hans was walking straight toward them down the corridor. Ethan felt his whole body lock up. Beside him, he felt Claire go rigid. This was it, the first hand of the longest game of their lives, and there'd been no time to prepare. No rehearsal, nothing but the three of them, and a man who wanted 250,000 people dead, closing the distance with an easy smile on his face. Ryan. Hans's voice was warm, familiar, the voice of an old friend. There you are. I heard you had some pushback on the analyst situation. His eyes flicked to Claire, and Ethan saw it now, saw what he'd missed yesterday, the coldness underneath the warmth, the calculation behind the friendly eyes. Dr. Walker, I hope there are no hard feelings. That flag came down from higher, I was just passing it along. Nothing personal. And Ethan watched his sister do the most terrifying thing he'd ever seen. She smiled. No hard feelings at all, Colonel, Claire said, and her voice was perfectly, impossibly calm. Warm even. You were just doing your job. I'd have flagged me too, honestly. I've been up for 3 days straight staring at this compound package. I'm sure I looked half insane in that briefing. She let out a tired little laugh. Commander Mitchell talked me down. I think the fatigue got to me. I was chasing a theory that didn't hold up. But we're back on track now. The compound's the target, the timeline's solid, and Iron Viper's going to go in and get Rahman clean. Ethan almost couldn't breathe. She was lying to the traitor's face, and she was better at it than the traitor was. Hans's eyes searched hers. Ethan could see him looking for the flicker, the tell, the crack. 26 years had made David Hans a very good reader of people, but he was reading Ghost Actual, and Ghost Actual had spent her whole career in the space between what people believe and what is true. A theory that didn't hold up, Hans repeated slowly. What theory was that? Oh, it's embarrassing. Claire waved a hand, self-deprecating, exhausted, utterly convincing. I got it in my head that the whole package was too clean, that maybe Rahman wasn't really there, that it was some kind of elaborate misdirection. She rolled her eyes at her own foolishness. Classic analyst paranoia. Stare at data long enough and everything looks like a conspiracy. Commander Mitchell pointed out I had zero proof and a whole lot of caffeine, and he was right. We're going after the compound. I feel a little dumb about the whole thing, honestly. And Ethan watched the miracle happen. He watched Colonel David Hans relax. He watched the traitor decide that the ghost had gotten close, had smelled something, and had then been talked out of it by an exhausted brain and a skeptical commander. He watched Hans conclude that his plan was safe, that the analyst had been neutralized not by force, but by her own self-doubt that the operation would proceed exactly as he designed it. And in that moment, Ethan understood that his sister had just done something no operator could ever do. She disarmed the most dangerous man on the base without touching a weapon, using nothing but the truth turned inside out. Well, Hans said, and the warmth in his voice was real now, the warmth of a man who thinks he's won. Get some rest before the op, Dr. Walker. You've earned it. And for what it's worth, the paranoia is not a flaw. It's the job. Just have to know when to let it go. He clapped Mitchell on the shoulder. I'll see you both in the operations center. Big night. Big night, Mitchell agreed, and his voice didn't waver, and Ethan didn't know how he did it. Hans walked away. The three of them stood frozen until he'd rounded the corner, and his footsteps had faded. And then Ethan let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a year. How, he said. How did you do that? Because he wanted to believe it, Claire said quietly. And now that Hans was gone, Ethan could see the cost of it in her face, the sheen of sweat, the tremor she'd hidden completely 30 seconds ago. The best lies aren't the ones you sell. They're the ones people are desperate to buy. Hans needed me to be a tired, paranoid analyst who got talked down because the alternative is that I saw everything and I'm coming for him. So I handed him the version he needed, and he took it. She wiped her palms on her pants. But it won't last. He's smart. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a little voice is going to keep asking why the crazy analyst suddenly got so reasonable. We bought hours, maybe, not more. We have to move. Mitchell was staring at her with something like awe. I have run operations for 20 years, Dr. Walker. I have never seen anyone do what you just did. You've never had to, Claire said. You fight with rifles. I fight with what people are willing to believe. She squared her shoulders. Now let's go win this thing before he figures out he just lost it. The operations center came alive over the next 2 hours, and it was the strangest, most terrifying performance Ethan had ever been part of, because everything was double. Every word had two meanings. Mitchell stood at the center of the room and ran a flawless compound assault briefing for the benefit of Colonel Hans, who sat at the officer's station watching everything with the calm satisfaction of a man whose plan was unfolding perfectly. And underneath it, in the burst channels, in the encrypted files, and the private glances between three people, the real operation took shape, aimed not at the mountain, but at the water. Not at a phantom terrorist, but at the field team waiting to poison 250,000 people. Claire briefed Iron Viper herself face to face in a side room with the door closed and Hans safely occupied in the main center. Ethan watched his sister look 11 hardened operators in the eye and tell them the truth. Everything you're about to hear on the main net is a lie, she told them. Every coordinate, every call out, every piece of it. It's theater for someone in that operations center who cannot be allowed to know what we're really doing. There's a traitor on our side high up, and he's watching, and the entire mission depends on him believing you're going to the compound. She let that land. You are not going to the compound. There's nothing at the compound but a trap. You're going to a water treatment facility 11 clicks southwest, where a team is preparing to introduce a chemical agent into the drinking supply for 240,000 people. Your job is to stop them, and the only voice you can trust is mine on the burst net on the frequency Mitchell gave you. When the main net and the burst net disagree, the burst net O'Shane is your life, every time. No exceptions. Are we clear? The room was silent. Then Reyes, the kid who'd laughed at her patch, stood up. Ma'am, ghost actual. His voice was steady. Yesterday I laughed at your call sign. I want to say something now in front of everybody before we go. He swallowed. I'd follow that burst net off a cliff. We all would. You saw what nobody else saw. That's the whole reason we're standing here instead of walking into a trap. So you talk and we'll listen and we'll bring your brother home. That's a promise from every man in this room. And Ethan watched his sister's composure crack just for a second, just long enough for him to see how much those words meant to a woman who'd carried 8 dead men for 2 years because no one would listen. Thank you, Reyes, she said quietly. Now let's go make sure nobody has to carry anybody. They launched at 0400. Ethan went in with the team on the point exactly where his sister had put him, and the strangeness of it hit him as the aircraft carried them toward the mountains. For 17 years, he'd been the one who decided, the one whose judgment the team lived and died by. And now he was giving all of that over to a voice in his ear, to the sister he'd laughed at. And the thing that shocked him was how completely he trusted her. Ghost actual to Iron Viper. Her voice came through the burst channel, calm and clear and steady as a heartbeat. Insertion in 6 minutes. Remember, the main net is going to tell you you're going to the compound. Ignore it. You're coming down on the water facility from the northeast. I've got eyes on the whole grid. I will walk you through every step. Trust the burst net. Iron Viper copies, Ethan said. We trust the ghost. And then the operation split cleanly in two, and Ethan lived inside the impossible thing his sister had built. In his ears, if he switched to the main net, he could hear the fiction. He could hear Mitchell back in the operations center calmly narrating a compound assault for Hance's benefit, calling out phases and coordinates that had nothing to do with where the team actually was. It was a masterpiece of misdirection, and somewhere behind Mitchell that Ethan knew Colonel David Hance was saluting and listening and believing every word, believing his plan was seconds from success, believing the diversion was about to kick off and clear the path to the water. And on the burst net underneath it all, his sister flew the real war. Iron Viper adjust heading 2 degrees left. There's a sensor package on the ridge the enemy planted to watch this approach. 2 degrees left keeps you in its blind spot. A pause. Good, you're clean. Continue. Ethan adjusted and the team adjusted with him, and Ethan realized his sister had just steered 11 men around an ambush none of them could see from a room 6,000 miles away, using nothing but data and her own extraordinary mind. How are you seeing this? He breathed into the burst net. Because I spent 72 hours learning how these people think. Claire's voice came back. They set up a second defensive layer around the real target in case anyone ever figured it out. I reverse engineered the whole thing from their own comms discipline. I know where they put their eyes because I know how they think, and I know how they think because I've done nothing but study them for 3 days straight. A beat. Ambush position ahead 40 meters 11 o'clock. 2 shooters elevated. Hold your team, Ethan. Do not advance. Ethan threw up a fist and the team froze. How do you want it? He whispered. Give me 30 seconds. I'm rerouting you around them. There's a drainage channel to your right that puts you above their position instead of below it. Her voice never wavered. Move to your right, low and quiet. I'll tell you when to take them. They moved. And 30 seconds later, exactly as she'd said, Iron Viper came down on 2 enemy shooters from above, from the one angle they weren't watching, and took them silently, and the ambush that should have shredded the team never fired a shot. 2 down, Ethan breathed. Clean. Ghost, that was... He didn't have a word for it. That was surgical. Keep moving, Claire said, but he could hear it in her voice, the fierce satisfaction the 2-year-old wound finally starting to close. You're 400 meters from the facility. And Ethan... A pause. The main net just went hot. Hance thinks the compound assault is beginning. He's watching Mitchell narrate a firefight that isn't happening. He thinks it's all going perfectly. He has no idea you're about to land on top of his real team. Then let's not keep them waiting, Ethan said. But even as the words left his mouth, something changed in Claire's voice. A hitch. A half-second of hesitation that Ethan had never once heard from her, not in 3 days, and it turned his blood to ice. Ethan, hold. Her voice had gone tight. Something's wrong. Talk to me, Ghost. The field team. Ethan could hear her typing fast, frantic. I've had them tagged this whole time, 6 operators at the facility waiting for the diversion. I've been tracking them by their comms. Her breath caught. They just went silent. All six. At once. Ethan, they cut their comms. What does that mean? It means either they finished their job, Claire's voice was climbing, or somebody just warned them. Somebody just told them to go dark and move. A pause that lasted a lifetime. Ethan Hance is in the operations center. He's supposed to be watching the fake compound assault. But if he sent a warning to his field team, if he somehow figured out, and that was when the main net crackled, and Mitchell's voice came through, and it wasn't the calm narrating voice anymore. It was sharp, urgent, stripu bear. Ghost, this is Mitchell. We have a problem. Hance just left the operations center. He got a phone call, stood up, and walked out. He's gone. Ethan felt the whole operation tilt on its edge. Where did he go? Claire's voice was razor sharp now. I don't know. He said he needed the head. That was 90 seconds ago. He hasn't come back. Mitchell's voice was grim. Claire, I think he made us. I think somewhere in the last hour he stopped believing your tired analyst story, and I think he just moved. And then on the burst net, Ethan heard his sister say the words he'd been dreading since the moment the plan was born. The field team went dark because Hance warned them, Claire said, and her voice was terrible and calm. He figured it out. I don't know how, I don't know when, but he made us, and he told his team the operation is blown, and now they're not waiting for a diversion anymore. Ethan could hear her pulling up everything at once, hunting, racing. Ethan listened to me very carefully. The plan was to catch them setting up. That plan is dead. Hance just told them to skip the timeline, which means right now, this second, that field team is not waiting to poison the water at the perfect moment. Claire. They're doing it now, she said. They're dumping the agent right now, and you are 400 meters away, and I don't know if you have 4 minutes or 4 seconds. Ethan's world narrowed to a single point. Give me the fastest route to that facility, he said. Forget quiet, forget the ambushes. Give me the straight line and I'll run it. The straight line runs you through the second ambush layer, Claire said. You'll be exposed the whole way. If they've got any shooters left watching that approach, they'll cut you to pieces. Then watch for me, Ethan said, already moving, already breaking into a run, the team surging behind him. You're my eyes. You've been my eyes this whole time. Don't stop now. Run me through it, Ghost. Get me to that water before it's too late. And Claire Walker, 6,000 miles away, the analyst who'd been laughed at, the ghost, who'd carried 8 dead men, took a breath and became in that moment everything she'd ever been meant to be. Copy Iron Viper, she said, and her voice was steel. I have you. Run when I say run, stop when I say stop, and I will put you in that facility before they finish. Now move, left, hard left. There's a shooter on the water tower. Down, get down, wait. A heartbeat. Now go, Ethan. Go. I've got you. I've got all of you. Run. And Ethan Walker ran through the dark toward 240,000 lives, chasing his sister's voice, trusting the ghost with everything he had, while somewhere behind them, a traitor vanished into the night, and a clock nobody could see ticked down toward black water. Ethan ran, and his sister's voice was the only thing in the world. Right cut, right, there's a low wall. Take it and stay behind it. Claire's words came fast and clean. No wasted breath, and Ethan obeyed every one of them without a flicker of doubt. 200 meters. Ethan, the field team's still dark, but I've got thermal, now and I'm pulling everything I can find. I count 4 bodies moving inside the facility near the primary intake. That's where they'll do it. The intake feeds the whole distribution grid. 4 inside. Ethan breathed, sprinting low behind the wall, the team strung out behind him. You said 6 earlier. 6 earlier, 4 now. A pause, and he heard the calculation in it, which means 2 of them are somewhere I can't see, and that's the part that's going to get someone killed. 2 shooters unaccounted for Ethan. Watch your flanks. I can't watch what I can't see. Copy. Reyes, watch our 6. 2 ghosts in the dark. On it, Reyes answered, and there was no fear in the kid's voice, only the flat focus of a man who decided to trust the voice on the burst net with his life. 150 meters. Claire's voice tightened. Ethan, I have to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. The main net's still running, the fake compound assault, Mitchell's still selling it. But Hance is gone, and I don't know where. And every second he's loose is a second he can do to anything I can't predict. I'm running 2 operations, the real one down there with you and a hunt for Hance up here, and I only have so much of me to go around. Then drop the hunt, Ethan said. Get me into that facility. We deal with Hans after. I can't drop the hunt, Claire shot back, because if Hans gets to a phone or a terminal, he can do more damage in 10 seconds than his whole field team can do in 10 minutes. He built this. He knows systems I haven't even found yet. If I take my eyes off him, he could open a door I don't know exists. Her voice sharpened. Stop, Ethan, stop right now, freeze. He froze, the whole team froze. Don't move. Barely a whisper now. There's a shooter, one of your two missing men. He's 40 meters ahead, elevated on the catwalk above the intake building. He's watching the exact door you were about to go through. If you'd taken 3 more steps, he'd have had you cold. A breath. That's one of the two. I still don't have the other. Ethan's heart was slamming, but his hands were steady. How do you want it? Give me a second. He could hear her working, pulling angles, running the geometry of the kill in her head from 6,000 miles away. There's a service ladder on the east side of that building. It puts you on the same catwalk behind him, out of his arc. Send 2 men up quiet. The rest of you hold. Take him silent, because the second there's a gunshot, the 4 inside dump the agent and it's over. Reyes Delgado, east ladder silent, take the catwalk shooter. Ethan pointed. The 2 men peeled off into the dark. Ghost talked them up. Copy. Reyes Delgado, slow the ladder's metal, and it'll ring if you rush it. Left hand, right foot quiet. Good. Good. He hasn't moved. He's still watching your brother's a door. 10 more feet. He's got no idea you're there. A long, agonizing pause. You're on the catwalk. He's 12 feet ahead of you, back turned. Go. Ethan heard nothing. That was how he knew it worked. 20 seconds of silence, and then Reyes's voice low and steady. Catwalk shooter down, silent, clean. Ethan let out a breath. 1 ghost left, Claire. Where's the other one? Still don't have him. And for the first time, her voice held something close to frustration, close to fear. Ethan, I've got thermal on everything with a heat signature in that facility, and I count 4 inside, 1 dead on the catwalk, and that's 5 of 6. The 6th man is somewhere cold. Either he's behind something that blocks the thermal, or she stopped. Or what? Or he's not at the facility at all, Claire said slowly. Ethan, what if the 6th man isn't guarding the water? What if the 6th man is the one Hans called? What if the 6th man left the facility to go do something else? Her voice climbed. Hold your position. Hold. Let me think. And Ethan Walker, crouched in the dark, 90 meters from a water supply about to be poisoned, did the hardest thing an operator can do. He held. He trusted the analyst. He waited on the voice. 10 seconds passed. 20. Oh no, Claire whispered. Oh no, Ethan, the 6th man. I think I know where he is. Where? The distribution station. Her words came in a rush now. The facility you're at is the treatment plant, but there's a secondary distribution station 4 kilometers north that pushes the treated water out to the refugee settlement, specifically the 40,000, mostly women and children. Ethan could hear her hands flying. Hans built redundancy into his own plan. Of course he did. He's too smart to put all his eggs in one basket. If we hit the treatment plant, he's still got the distribution station. If we hit the distribution station, he's still got the treatment plant. He needed both to be hit before either one mattered, but the second he realized we were coming, he split them. Poison, one poison the other, and it doesn't matter if we stop one, because the other one still kills the settlement. Ethan felt the ground drop out from under him. 2 targets. We're one team. You're one team, Claire said, and the weight of it was in her voice. And you're at the wrong half of it, or the right half. I can't even tell anymore because they both matter and you can only be at one. A terrible pause. Ethan, I have to make a call right now that I am not qualified to make. If I split your team, neither half is strong enough to be sure. If I keep you together, one of the 2 targets gets poisoned no matter what we do. Then don't split us, Ethan said. Give me the whole team on the treatment plant. We take it fast and then we sprint the 4 clicks to the distribution station. You don't have time to do both. The 4 inside are seconds from dumping the agent and the 6th man's already moving on the distribution station. By the time you clear the plant and run 4 kilometers, the settlement's water is already black. Her voice cracked, the first true crack in all night. Ethan, there's no version of this where one team saves both. I ran it 4 times. There isn't one. And in the dark 90 meters from the water, Ethan Walker heard his sister run out of answers for the first time, and he understood that this was the moment the whole thing had been building toward. Not a firefight, a choice, an impossible one. And it had landed on the shoulders of a woman who'd already carried 8 dead men for 2 years, and now the universe was asking her to choose which strangers lived and which died. Claire, he said quietly, listen to me. There isn't a solution, Ethan. I've looked. There's no... Claire, breathe. His voice was gentle now, the big brother from a lifetime ago. You've been carrying this whole thing on your back since 3 in the morning. You caught the trap nobody saw. You turned it around. You walked us through 2 ambushes and disarmed a traitor without touching a weapon. You've been perfect, but you don't have to carry this one alone. He took a breath. You've got a whole team down here. You've got Mitchell up there, and you've got Reyes and 10 other men who'd walk into fire on your word. Stop trying to be the only one who solves it. Give us the problem and let us help you solve it. There was a silence on the burst net, and then unbelievably, Ethan heard his sister let out a shaking breath, and when she spoke again, something had steadied in her. Okay, she said. Okay, you're right. I've been doing this alone for so long, I forgot I don't have to. A beat. Mitchell, you there? I'm here, Ghost. Mitchell's voice came across, and Ethan realized the commander had been listening the whole time patched into the burst net waiting. I heard all of it. 2 targets, 1 team. Talk to me. I need a second element, Claire said. I need bodies on that distribution station in the next 4 minutes, and Iron Viper can't be in 2 places. Is there anyone in range? A pause, then Mitchell slowly. There's a quick reaction force, aviation capable. They're spun up for the compound assault fallback, sitting on the pad right now waiting for a call that was never supposed to come. His voice sharpened. They were Hance's contingency, his men technically staged for his fake operation. But they answer to the operations center, and right now the operations center is me. Can you trust them? Claire asked. Hance staged them. What if they're his? Some of them might be, Mitchell admitted. But I know they're Commander Major Pruitt, and I've known him longer than I've known Hance, and I'd stake my life he's clean. A pause. I'll stake my life on it because that's exactly what I'm about to do. I'll put Pruitt's QRF on the distribution station, and if I'm wrong about him, we lose everything, but I don't think I'm wrong. Do it, Claire said. Send them north. Distribution station, 4 clicks. 1 shooter minimum chemical agent inbound. Tell Pruitt the water is the target and the settlement is downstream, and he's got about 4 minutes. Go. Sending them now. And Ethan heard Mitchell's voice shift as he keyed another channel, cold and fast, throwing a quick reaction force at a target they'd never briefed, betting 40,000 lives on his read of one man's loyalty. Ethan, Claire was back with him, and her voice had its edge again. The QRF takes the distribution station. That's yours off your plate. You take the treatment plant right now fast and hard because the 4 inside heard nothing but, I guarantee you they were on a clock in their own heads. Go. Take the plant. I'll walk you in. Copy. Iron Viper on me. We take the intake building. Ghost has the ball. Move. And they moved. Ethan came through the door his sister had steered him to, and the world compressed into the tight, roaring focus of close combat. 4 men at the intake exactly where she'd said, one of them crouched over a case, a canister already half connected to the primary feed line. Contact, Ethan breathed. 4, they're at the intake, one's got the agent on the line. Take him first. Claire's voice snapped in his ear. The one on the line, everything else second. If he opens that canister into the feed, it doesn't matter what else you do. Take him first, Ethan, right now. Ethan took him first. The next 11 seconds were the fastest and longest of his life, and through every one of them, his sister's voice was there, steady, precise, seeing what he couldn't. Man behind the tank, your left. Reyes high on the platform. Ethan, the canister, secure the canister. Don't let it fall if the seal breaks in here. It's still in the building's air. And Ethan dropped his rifle onto its sling and caught the canister as it fell from a dying man's hands, cradled it against his chest like the most precious and terrible thing in the world, and held it while the last of the fighting died around him. Silence. Plant secure, Ethan said, his voice shaking, the canister still against his chest. 4 down, agents contained. It never touched the water. Claire, it never touched the water. He heard her exhale 6,000 miles away, a sound like a person setting down a weight they'd carried past the point of breaking. Copy, Iron Viper. Treatment plant is clean. A pause. 1 down, 1 to go. Mitchell, talk to me, where's Pruitt? Pruitt's inbound on the distribution station now. Mitchell came back. 30 seconds out. Ghost, you got eyes for him. I'm pulling everything north right now. Ethan could hear her shifting the whole weight of her attention 4 kilometers up the grid, hunting for a thermal signature for the 6th man for the second half of the nightmare. I've got the distribution station. I've got Pruitt's element coming in from the west. And I've got... She stopped. The silence stretched. Claire, Ethan said, what do you see? I've got 1 man at the distribution station, she said slowly. 1 heat signature inside near the outflow valve. The 6th man. He's got a case with him, same profile as the one you just secured. Her voice was tight. And Ethan, there's a 2nd signature. Just arrived. Just walked into the building from the north side. A beat. It's not one of Pruitt's men. Pruitt's coming from the west, and he's not there yet. This is someone else. Someone who came alone on foot from a direction nobody's covering. Ethan's blood went cold. It's hands. It's hands, Claire breathed. It has to be. He left the operations center he made us, and he didn't run. He went to his own contingency to make sure it got done. He's at the distribution station right now with his last man and his last canister, and Pruitt's still 20 seconds out. And if Hans dumps that agent before Pruitt breaches 40,000 people in that settlement are already dead. Get Pruitt in there, Ethan said. Now. Pruitt breach. Breach, breach. Claire was already transmitting her voice hard as iron. 2 hostiles inside north end near the outflow. One of them's carrying a chemical agent, and he is seconds from dumping it. Do not wait, do not stack. Go through the nearest door and put them down before that canister opens. Go. And then for the longest 30 seconds of Ethan Walker's life, there was nothing anyone could do but listen. He stood in the treatment plant with a canister of death against his chest and his team around him, and he listened to the burst net to his sister, narrating a battle 4 kilometers away that she could see and he could not, that Pruitt was fighting and she was directing, and Ethan could only pray through. Pruitt's in, Claire said. He's through the north door. Contact he's got. Contact the 6th man's engaging. A pause that lasted a year. 6th man down. Pruitt got the 6th man. Ethan, they got the canister carrier. The agent still sealed. And then her voice changed, went sharp and urgent and afraid. Where's Hans? Where's Hans? Pruitt, the 2nd man, the one from the north. Where is he? I've lost him. He moved when you breached. And Ethan heard faintly across 4 kilometers and 6,000 miles and 2 comms channels the sound he'd been dreading. A single gunshot. Then 2 more. Pruitt, Claire's voice cracked. Pruitt, report. Report. Somebody tell me what's happening. Silence on the net. Pruitt, Ethan said low, urgent, uselessly from 4 kilometers away. Pruitt, come on. And then ragged breathing hard, Major Pruitt's voice came across the burst net. We're clear. We're clear. 2nd hostile down, but he almost... A gasp. A man catching his breath after a thing that nearly went the other way. He had the valve open. Ghost. He had the outflow valve open and the canister in his hand. He was 1 second from tipping it in, and my point man put him down with the canister already tilting. It fell. It fell, but it didn't break. It's sealed. It's on the floor, and it's sealed. A shaking breath. 1 second, Ghost. 1 second the other way, and 40,000 people were dead. Your call to breach without stacking. If we'd stacked up proper, we'd have been 2 seconds slower, and 2 seconds was everything. The burst net went quiet, and Ethan Walker, standing in a water treatment plant with a canister against his chest, heard his sister make a sound he'd never heard her make in 34 years of life. A small, broken, disbelieving sound, half a laugh and half a sob, the sound of a person who has been holding the entire weight of the world on her back and has just barely, impossibly set it down without dropping it. Both targets secure, Claire said, and her voice was thick. Both canisters contained, the water's clean, both facilities, the settlement's safe, the whole grid is safe. Nobody... Her voice broke and reformed. Nobody drank it, nobody died. We got them both. We got them both, Ethan echoed, and he realized his own eyes were burning. Claire, you got them both. The second man at the distribution station. Mitchell's voice came in quiet and heavy. The one Pruitt's team put down. Pruitt confirm identity. A pause. Confirming now, Pruitt said. Then slowly, it's a colonel. American uniform. Command insignia. His voice was hollow with the horror of it. The tags say Hance. David Hance, barked. The name landed on the net and nobody spoke. Ethan stood very still. Colonel David Hance, the man who'd shaken his hand yesterday, the man whose kids called Mitchell Uncle Ryan, the man who had built a plan to murder 250,000 people and use Ethan's own team to do it. Dead on the floor of a distribution station, with an open valve and a sealed canister beside him, 1 second and 1 point man's steady hand away from succeeding. He went himself, Mitchell said, and his voice was gray with grief and something harder underneath it. When he made you Claire, he didn't run. He went to finish it with his own hands. 26 years, and he went to pour poison into a well full of children with his own hands. A long silence. I ate at his table. My kids, he stopped. He couldn't finish it. Commander, Claire said gently, you made the call on Pruitt. You bet 40,000 lives on your read of one man's loyalty, and you were right. If you'd hesitated, if you'd trusted Hance 1 second longer than you did, they'd all be dead. A pause. You didn't kill your friend tonight. Your friend died a long time ago somewhere you couldn't see. What you did tonight was save 40,000 people from the man he'd become. Don't carry the wrong weight home. And Ethan, listening, understood that his sister had just done for Mitchell exactly what she'd done for 240,000 strangers. She'd seen the thing no one else could bear to look at, and she'd told the truth about it clean and unflinching, and in doing so she'd saved something. Not a life this time, a man's ability to live with himself. They held the facilities through the dawn, while the follow-on forces arrived, while the canisters were secured by people trained for exactly that kind of horror, while the machinery of accountability began to grind into motion around the corpse of a colonel who'd betrayed everything. And through all of it, the voice on the burst net stayed with them, steady calm, seeing everything, until at last the word came that both sites were fully secured and Iron Viper was cleared to exfil. Iron Viper, this is Ghost Actual. Claire's voice came one last time as the team moved to the extraction point. Mission complete, every man accounted for, every man coming home. A pause and then softer just for one of them, though the whole net could hear it. Ethan, you can put the canister down now. You did it. You can let go. And Ethan Walker, who'd carried a canister of death against his chest for 2 hours, who'd run through the dark, chasing his sister's voice, who trusted the ghost with his team and his life, and 250,000 strangers, finally handed the canister to the specialists and stood there in the gray dawn with empty, shaking hands and let himself feel all of it at once. Ghost Actual, he said into the net, and his voice was rough. The patch, the one I held over my head, the one I laughed at. He swallowed hard. I need you to know. I get it now. I get all of it. There was a pause on the net. I know, Claire said quietly. Come home, Ethan. We'll talk when you're home. But even as the extraction bird lifted off, even as the sun came up over 240,000 people who would never know how close they'd come, there was one thing left unfinished, one thread that Claire hadn't spoken aloud, one question that had been sitting in the back of her mind since the moment Pruitt confirmed the body. Because Hance was dead, and dead men don't answer for what they've done. And somewhere in the chain that had let a colonel push a fitness flag through higher channels, that had let a trail be built to a compound, and a team be chosen, and a whole operation be aimed like a weapon. Somewhere in that chain, Claire Walker knew with cold and certain instinct, Colonel David Hance had not been working alone. Someone above him had opened doors. Someone above him was at this very moment watching the operation fail and deciding what to do about the analyst who'd unraveled it. And that someone now knew her name, Ghost Actual. Claire didn't say it out loud on the net. She didn't have proof yet, and she'd learned a long time ago what happens when you say a thing like that without proof. But the instinct sat in her chest like a stone, all through the exfil, all through the debrief, all through the wing gray hours, while Iron Viper flew home, and the world went on believing that a colonel had acted alone. Hance had pushed a fitness flag through higher channels. Analysts don't have that reach. Colonels don't have that reach. Not that fast, not that clean. Someone above him had opened the door, and that someone was still out there, and that someone now knew exactly who had torn the whole thing down. She kept working while Ethan flew home. That was the thing about Claire that Ethan would only fully understand later. The op was over. Everyone else was standing down, exhaling, letting the adrenaline drain out of their hands. And Claire Walker sat back down at her workstation and kept hunting because in her world the fight didn't end when the shooting stopped. Her fight ended when the truth was complete, and it wasn't complete not yet. Ethan landed at Camp Pendleton 11 hours after extraction, and the first thing he did before he'd even shed his gear, before he'd slept or eaten or let his hands stop shaking was go find his sister. She was in the analytical suite. Of course she was. 3 screens glowing cold coffee at her elbow, the same as 36 hours ago. Except everything was different now. Everything. You should be asleep, Ethan said from the doorway. Claire didn't turn around. So should you. Yeah, well. He came in and sat down next to her the way he had at 3 a.m. a lifetime ago. Next to her, not behind her. Couldn't. Kept seeing that canister falling. Kept feeling it hit my hands. He rubbed his face. How do you do it, Claire? How do you carry this and just keep going? I don't keep going because it's easy, she said quietly. I keep going because I found out 2 years ago what happens when I stop. She finally looked at him, and the exhaustion in her face was bone deep, older than 36 hours. You saw the canister fall. I saw 8 men walk into a valley I told everyone was a trap. You get to put your thing down eventually. Mine doesn't put down. It just gets heavier or lighter depending on the day. A pause. Today it got a little lighter. 240,000 people, 40,000 of them kids in a settlement that doesn't even have a name on most maps. Today it got lighter. Ethan sat with that. Then he said the thing he'd been building up to the whole flight home. I need to say it right this time. Not on a net, not in the middle of a firefight. He turned to face her fully. Claire, I held your call sign over my head in a room full of my men and I laughed at it. I've been doing some version of that your whole life, waving you off. Way over my head, kiddo. This isn't a library. Telling you your world wasn't the real one. His voice was thick. And the truth is you've been fighting a harder war than me this entire time. Alone. Behind a screen where nobody claps when you win, where nobody even knows you won. You saved my whole team. You saved 250,000 strangers. And the only reason any of it worked is because you're the best I have ever seen at anything, and I spent 34 years too proud to look. Claire was very still. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight, Ethan said. I don't think I've earned that yet. I'm just asking you to let me start. For a long moment, she didn't answer. And then she said in a voice so quiet he almost missed it. You know what the worst part was yesterday in that briefing room? She looked at the patch on her bag, the 2 words stitched in black thread. It wasn't that they laughed. Men laugh. I've been in enough of those rooms to let it roll off. The worst part was that you laughed, because you were the one person in that room I'd walked in hoping would see me. I got assigned to Iron Viper and I thought, finally, Ethan gets to see what I actually do. He's going to sit there and watch me and he's going to understand. Her voice cracked just slightly. And instead you held my name over your head like a joke, and I stood there and I thought, of course he did. Why would today be different from every other day of my life? Ethan couldn't speak. The words hit him harder than any round ever had. But then, Claire went on and something shifted in her voice. At 3 a.m, you came and sat down next to me. Not behind me, next to me. And you asked me what I saw. You actually asked. She looked at him. And you listened. And when the whole system tried to pull me off that op, you and Mitchell put yourselves in front of it. And when I ran out of answers over 2 targets, you were the one who told me I didn't have to carry it alone. She swallowed. So no, you haven't earned all of it back. But you started. You started about 33 hours ago. And Ethan, her voice steadied, starting is the hardest part. Most people never even do that. Ethan reached over and very carefully unclipped the patch from her bag. He held it in both hands this time, not over his head, not for a room to laugh at. He held it the way Mitchell had, the way you hold something that was earned in blood. Ghost Actual, he said, and he handed it back to her gently, and this time there was nothing in it but respect. I understand now. Claire took it, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, in front of the one person whose opinion had always mattered most, She let a single tear fall and she didn't wipe it away, and she wasn't ashamed of it. Okay, she said softly. Okay. They sat in that for a moment, brother and sister, the distance of a lifetime finally closing. And then Claire wiped her face, turned back to her screens, and her whole posture changed, and Ethan knew the moment had passed, and the analyst was back. But we're not done, she said. What do you mean we're not done? Both targets secure. Hans is dead. The water's clean. Hans is dead, Claire agreed. Ish, that's the problem. She pulled up something on the center screen. Ethan, think about it. That fitness flag that tried to pull me off the op. It came down from higher. Not from Hans's desk, from above him. A colonel can't just push a mental fitness review through echelon above channels in 15 minutes on his own authority. He needed someone higher to greenlight it, or he needed someone higher to have already built the mechanism for him. Her jaw tightened. Somebody above Hans opened that door. And when the operation failed, when Hans died, that somebody didn't die with him. That somebody is still sitting at a desk somewhere watching, and they know exactly one thing about me. That you're the one who unraveled it, Ethan said slowly. That I'm the one who unraveled it, Claire said. Hans built the trail. Hans chose your team. But somebody gave Hans the access and the cover to do it, and that somebody has been very, very careful. And now they have a very specific problem. She looked at her brother. Me. I'm the loose end. I saw the whole shape of it. And I'm the only person alive who can testify to what really happened because everyone else who was inside the plan is dead. Ethan felt the old cold focus settle over him again. So what do? We do what we did to Hans, Claire said. We let them believe they're safe. We let them believe that with Hans dead, the story ends, that the analyst got lucky that nobody's looking any higher. A dangerous light came into her eyes. And meanwhile, I follow the one thread Hans couldn't scrub. Because here's the thing about that fitness flag. To push it through higher channels, someone had to authenticate it at a level above Hans. And that authentication. The lock remembers, Ethan said. Claire actually smiled. You were listening. I listen now, Ethan said. So the lock remembers. Someone above Hans authenticated the flag. You can trace it. I can trace it, Claire said. But it's going to take time and it's going to be dangerous because the second I start pulling that thread, they'll feel it. And unlike Hans, this person has had 36 hours to prepare and the authority to make me disappear behind a wall of classification. Her voice was steady, which is why I already made a copy of everything and gave it to 2 people I trust with my life before I started. Who? You and Mitchell, Claire said. It's already done. If anything happens to me, if I get reassigned, discredited, buried, silenced, you 2 have the whole picture and you know exactly where to send it. She looked at him. I learned that lesson 2 years ago too. Never be the only one who knows the truth. That's how truth dies. And that was the moment Commander Ryan Mitchell appeared in the doorway. He looked like a man who hadn't slept and wasn't going to for a while, a man carrying the corpse of a 26-year friendship on his back. But there was something else in his face too. Something Ethan recognized because he'd felt it himself in the last 36 hours. The look of a man who'd been shown a harder, truer way of seeing and couldn't unsee it. I've been standing there for a minute, Mitchell said. I heard the part about someone above Hans. He came in and stood across from them. You're right. I've been thinking the same thing since Pruitt read me those tags. Hans was good, but he wasn't good enough to move an echelon above flag in 15 minutes without help. Someone protected him. Someone's been protecting him for a while. His jaw set. And I think I know how to find out who. Claire looked up sharply. How? Because I've been in this Navy for 26 years, Mitchell said. And I know exactly how many people had the authority to greenlight that flag. And it's a very short list. 4 names. Maybe 5. He pulled a chair over and sat down, joining them, 3 people around 3 screens. I can't touch them. I'm a commander. They're above me. But I can tell you who they are, and I can tell you which of them had a reason to be near this operation, and then he nodded at Claire. You can do the thing you do. The lock remembers. Let's go ask it which of these 4 names opened the door for David Hans. And Claire Walker looked at the 2 men sitting beside her, the brother who'd finally seen her and the commander who'd trusted her when the whole system said not to, and she understood something that took the last of the weight off her chest. She wasn't alone anymore. For 2 years, she'd carried the truth by herself, the ghost in the machine that nobody would listen to. And now there were 3 of them. "Give me the 4 names," she said. Mitchell gave her 4 names. Claire went to work, and what took her the next 6 hours, Ethan couldn't follow in any detail. But he understood the shape of it because he'd learned to understand the shape of what his sister did. She hunted, she cross-referenced, she pulled authentication logs and access records and travel patterns and financial threads, the same spider's web she'd built around Omar Rahman, except this time it pulled toward a desk inside their own house. She eliminated the first name in an hour, the second in 2. The third took her most of the afternoon, and when she cleared him, there were only 2 names left, and then only 1. And when she finally saw which one it was, she went very still. The way she'd gone still when she saw Hance's name, except worse. "Ethan," she said quietly. "Mitchell, come look at this." They came and looked. "Rear Admiral Catherine Voss," Claire said, "Deputy Director for Special Operations Oversight. She authenticated the fitness flag. She's had command-level visibility on this operation since before the target package was built. And bam, she pulled up one more screen. 18 months ago, she personally signed off on the original intelligence assessment for the Valley. The one where 8 men died. The one I flagged as a trap and got buried." The room went silent. "She buried your report," Ethan said slowly, the pieces locking into a horror bigger than any of them had imagined. 2 years ago, she's the one who buried it. "She's the one who buried it," Claire said, and her voice was hollow. "I never knew whose desk it died on. I just knew it died. 8 men walked into that valley because a report got buried, and I've spent 2 years not knowing whose hand did it." She looked up, and there was something terrible and clear in her eyes. It was her. The same person who buried the Valley report is the same person who protected Hance and tried to pull me off this operation. It was never just a rogue colonel. It's a pattern. It's been a pattern for years. Someone at the top of Special Operations Oversight has been protecting operations that get people killed and burying the one analyst who keeps seeing it coming. "Why?" Mitchell breathed. "In God's name, why would she?" "I don't know why yet," Claire said. "Money, ideology, someone she answers to that we can't even see. I don't know. But I know what she's done, and I know I can prove she authenticated that flag, and I know she buried the Valley." Her hands were steady now. "And I know that as of about 6 hours ago when I started pulling this thread, she felt it. Rear Admiral Voss knows I'm looking, which means she's already deciding what to do about the analyst who just cost her a $250,000 casualty operation and is now digging into the Valley she thought she'd buried forever." And as if the universe itself wanted to prove her right, Claire's screen flickered. All 3 of them saw it. The same flicker from 36 hours ago, the same lights, the same cold intrusion into a system that shouldn't be touchable, and a single line of text appeared white on black, pulsing slowly. "Stop digging, Ghost. This is bigger than you." Ethan was on his feet, his hand at his hip. Mitchell had gone rigid, but Claire didn't flinch. Claire looked at the words on her screen, the exact same intimidation that had frightened her 36 hours ago, and this time something entirely different crossed her face. She laughed. It was quiet, and it was cold, and it was the laugh of a person who has stopped being afraid. "You know what that is?" she said, not to the screen, but to the 2 men beside her. "That's the second time. The first time 36 hours ago, that message scared me. I saw 'We see you too,' Ghost, and my hands shook, and I thought I was in over my head." She stood up slowly, facing the screen. "But I know something now that I didn't know then. People at the top don't send threats when they're winning. They send threats when they're scared. Hance threatened me because I was close, and I was close. And now Voss is threatening me because I'm close again. This isn't a warning that I should stop." Her voice hardened into something like steel. "This is a confession that I'm right." She sat back down, and then without a moment's hesitation, without so much as a flicker of the fear the message was designed to provoke, she started typing again. "Claire," Ethan said, "she just told you to stop. Someone who can reach into a secure system and put words on your screen just personally told you to stop." "I heard her," Claire said, not slowing, "and she's about to find out that the last person who tried to scare me off is lying in a distribution station with a sealed canister and a security detail standing over his body." "I don't stop, Ethan. That's the whole thing about me that everyone keeps getting wrong. They think the quiet one behind the screen is the one who backs down. Her fingers flew. I'm the one who doesn't. And she didn't. Over the next 72 hours, Claire Walker built the most complete, most airtight, most undeniable intelligence package of her career. She proved the authentication chain that led from the fitness flag to Rear Admiral Catherine Voss. She resurrected the Buried Valley report and proved whose hand had buried it. She connected Hans to Voss through 18 months of access records and authorizations that no one was ever supposed to look at side by side. And she did it all while the most powerful person in special operations oversight was actively trying to bury her, reassign her, discredit her, and make her disappear. But this time, Claire wasn't a junior analyst that nobody knew. This time, she had a package that 3 people had copies of. This time, she had a Navy SEAL commander who'd watched the system kill 8 men and refused to let it happen again, standing ready to hand the whole thing to investigators the moment Claire gave the word. And this time, she had a brother, a senior chief with 17 years and a spotless record and a voice the institution respected, who walked into the offices that mattered and said with the full weight of everything he was, "You are going to listen to my sister." They listened. The reckoning came fast once it started. Rear Admiral Voss was relieved of command on a Thursday morning, escorted out of a building she'd ruled for 6 years. Her access revoked her career, ended the beginning of an investigation that would eventually pull the thread on things far larger than one operation in one valley. The full story never made the news because stories like that never do. But inside the community, in the quiet rooms where it mattered, everyone came to know the shape of it. Everyone came to know that 250,000 people were alive and 40,000 children in a settlement without a name still had clean water, and a colonel and an admiral who traded their oaths for something the rest of them would never fully understand had been stopped. And everyone came to know the name of the person who'd stopped them. Ghost Actual. There was a ceremony weeks later, a small one, the kind that doesn't get cameras, held in a room full of people who understood what they were witnessing. Commander Mitchell stood at the front. Iron Viper stood in formation, every man who trusted the burst net with his life Reyes in the front row. And Claire Walker stood before them in a room that had 6 weeks earlier laughed at her name. Nobody laughed now. Mitchell spoke, and he didn't speak long because the men in that room didn't need a long speech. 6 weeks ago, he said, some of us in this room, myself not excluded, believed that the only warriors that mattered were the ones who carried a rifle, that the person behind the screen was support, was secondary, was the paperwork that happened while the real work got done. He paused. 6 weeks ago, 250,000 people were going to die, and the only reason they didn't is a woman who never fired a shot, who nobody would listen to, who stood in this exact room and let us laugh at her call sign because she'd learned that's what the world does to people like her. His voice thickened. I've spent 26 years learning who the real warriors are. It took me until 6 weeks ago to learn the last and most important lesson. Some of the strongest people you will ever serve with never pull a trigger. They just see the truth and they carry it. And they refuse to put it down until someone finally listens. He turned to Claire. Dr. Walker, on behalf of every man in this room and 240,000 people who will never know your name, thank you. And then Commander Ryan Mitchell, 45 years old, 26 years in the teams, a man who'd earned the right to salute or be saluted by nearly anyone alive, faced Claire Walker and brought his hand up in a slow, deliberate salute. He didn't salute Ethan. He didn't salute the operators. He saluted the ghost. And Ethan Walker, standing in that formation, watching his commander salute his little sister, felt something break open in his chest that he would carry for the rest of his life. Because he understood finally and completely what the whole thing had been about. Not a mission, not a traitor, not even 250,000 lives, as staggering as that was. It had been about a truth so simple that it had taken a catastrophe to make him see it. Some people saved the whole world without ever being seen doing it. Claire brought her own hand up and returned the salute, and her hand was steady, and her chin was level, and her eyes were dry now. Not because she'd learned to hide what she felt, but because she'd finally been seen, and the seeing had healed something that 2 years of silence had left broken. Afterward, when the formation broke and the room emptied, Ethan found his sister standing alone by the window, the patch in her hands. Ghost Actual. 2 words stitched in black thread by a master chief who'd survived a valley because she'd seen the truth even when no one would hear it. You okay? He asked. Yeah, Claire said. And this time it was true, and they both knew it was true. Yeah, I think I am. Ethan stood next to her, not behind her, next to her. You know, he said, I spent my whole career thinking strength was the loudest thing in the room. The guy who kicks in the door, the tip of the spear. He shook his head slowly. Turns out the strongest person I ever met spent 34 years being the quietest one in every room, seeing everything, saying what needed saying, even when nobody wanted to hear it, and never once backing down. Turns out I had it backwards the whole time. Claire looked at the patch in her hands. Then she looked at her brother. There are warriors who stand at the front, she said quietly, and there are warriors who are the reason the ones at the front come home. For a long time, I thought I had to become the first kind to matter. She clipped the patch back onto her gear where it belonged, where it had always belonged. I don't think that anymore. She didn't need anyone to hold her name up for a room to see. She'd never needed that. She'd only ever needed one thing, the thing she'd been denied her entire life until the night the water almost ran black and it had finally fully been given. She had been seen. Claire Walker was the strongest warrior Ethan had ever known, and she had never once fired a shot, and she had saved them all. That was the truth. It had always been the truth. And now, at last, everyone knew it.